If you've been faithful, consistent, doing everything you were told would lead somewhere, and yet nothing is moving, this part is for you, because there is a season no one prepares you for, a stretch of time where effort seems invisible, where obedience feels unanswered, where progress refuses to show its face. Promotion is visible. Everyone sees it when it arrives. They clap for it. They name it success. But preparation happens where no one is looking. And that's the part no one tells you. There is a space between calling and confirmation, between promise and permission. A narrow place where movement slows, not speeds up. Where doors don't open, they hold. And in that space, everything feels confusing. You look around and wonder why others are advancing while you're standing still. You start questioning timing. You start questioning yourself. You start asking whether faithfulness still matters when results don't appear. But what if this moment isn't failure? What if the delay isn't rejection, but examination? What if the very stillness that frustrates you is doing something precise, measuring weight, testing endurance, revealing what applause would hide? Because advancement doesn't begin on the stage. It begins in the unseen places where motives are exposed and character is refined. There are things you can only learn when nothing is happening. Lessons that noise would interrupt, strength that movement would shortcut. And this is why the most confusing seasons often come right before advancement, right before responsibility increases, right before authority expands, right before visibility arrives. Because elevation without preparation collapses, and speed without structure breaks. So the process slows you down, not to stop you, but to steady you, not to embarrass you, but to anchor you. There is a reason your progress feels quiet. There is a reason your efforts feel unnoticed. There is a reason nothing seems to be shifting, even though you haven't stopped showing up. This part is not punishment. It is not abandonment. It is not proof that you've missed something. It is the part where foundations are inspected before weight is added. And once you see that, once you understand what the season is really doing, the waiting starts to make sense. There is a pattern most people never notice. Not because it is hidden, but because it doesn't look important while you're inside it. Every major promotion in life, spiritual or practical, follows a season of testing. Not the kind that feels dramatic, not the kind that announces itself, the quiet kind, the ordinary kind, the kind that looks like repetition, responsibility, and restraint. Testing is not punishment, it is qualification. And this is where many people misunderstand how advancement actually works. Because potential is impressive, but potential is not trusted. Capacity is. Think about the workplace. No serious organization promotes someone based on talent alone. They watch how you handle pressure. They watch how you manage deadlines that don't excite you. They watch how you respond when recognition is delayed. They pay attention to how you treat people when authority is absent. Not to reward you, but to assess you. Because a title amplifies whatever is already there. Leadership works the same way. No one hands real influence to someone who hasn't proven they can carry weight without applause. Before people follow your voice, they watch your consistency. Before they trust your direction, they observe your discipline. Leadership isn't about visibility, it's about reliability. And reliability is only revealed under testing. Even parenting follows this pattern. Before a child is trusted with freedom, they are trusted with responsibility. Small instructions come before big independence. Boundaries exist not to restrict growth, but to shape it. Because freedom without structure creates damage. Life understands this instinctively. Yet when it comes to our own progress, we resist it. We assume testing means something is wrong. We interpret delay as disapproval. We mistake evaluation for rejection. But promotion doesn't come to those who look ready. It comes to those who have proven they are ready. This is why so many people feel overlooked right before advancement. Why the workload increases without explanation. Why expectations rise before authority does. You're being trusted before you're being elevated. Capacity is being formed quietly. And here's the truth most people never hear. God doesn't promote what might work. He promotes what can hold pressure, what can hold responsibility, what can hold influence without losing alignment. Testing isn't about breaking you, it's about confirming you. Because when promotion finally comes, there will be no time to build what this season is shaping now. And once you recognize that pattern, you stop fighting the process and start understanding it. There is a reason some doors don't open when you want them to. A reason influence doesn't arrive on schedule. A reason visibility waits. Because promotion without testing doesn't elevate people. It exposes them. And exposure without foundation creates collapse. When responsibility comes before readiness, pressure reveals what preparation would have corrected. When attention comes before maturity, flaws don't disappear. They multiply. Visibility is not gentle. It does not soften weaknesses. It magnifies them. Every unresolved habit becomes louder. Every insecurity becomes public. Every gap in character turns costly. This is why some people rise quickly and fall just as fast, not because they were unqualified in talent, but because they were unfinished in structure. Testing exists to build what applause cannot. Because once influence arrives, there is no privacy left to repair what should have been strengthened earlier. This is the part most people miss. Delay is not always denial. Being overlooked is not always rejection. Sometimes it is protection. Protection from pressure you're not ready to carry. Protection from consequences you don't yet see. Protection from becoming visible before becoming stable. What you call delay may be mercy that would demand more than you can currently sustain. Mercy that keeps you grounded while capacity catches up with calling. And what you call being overlooked may be preservation. Preservation of your integrity. Preservation of your confidence. Preservation of your future. Because influence has weight, it demands consistency when energy runs low. It demands restraint when options expand. It demands clarity when voices multiply. Without testing, those demands crush people. This is why preparation often feels restrictive. Why expectations increase before freedom does. Why responsibility grows before recognition appears. You're being strengthened quietly for something that will be loud. Because once promotion comes, there will be no buffer, no grace period, no space to learn in private. Everything will count. So if it feels like progress is slower than it should be, if it feels like others are moving while you remain steady, pause. Consider the possibility that this isn't neglect, that this isn't delay for delay's sake. It may be protection disguised as waiting, preservation disguised as stillness. Because the goal was never to get you seen quickly. The goal was to get you standing when visibility arrives. And once you understand that, the delay no longer feels like loss. It starts to feel like care. There are tests you don't sign up for, no instructions, no warning, no announcement that you're being evaluated. They don't look like exams. They look like ordinary days. Days where nothing changes, days where effort goes unnoticed, days where the room stays quiet even though you showed up. And yet these are the moments that count the most, because the most important tests in life are invisible. The first is the character test. Who are you when no one is watching? When there's no audience to impress? When integrity costs more than convenience? Character isn't revealed under pressure alone. It's revealed in repetition, in the small choices you make when there's nothing to gain. How you speak when no one will quote you. How you treat people who can't reward you. How you carry responsibility when recognition isn't coming. Then there's the consistency test. Will you keep going when it's quiet? When motivation fades? When progress feels slow and purpose feels distant? Consistency is not about intensity. It's about endurance. Showing up again and again and again. Not because someone is counting, but because quitting would cost you more than continuing. Next comes the humility test. Can you grow without applause? Can you improve without being affirmed? Can you learn without being celebrated? Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's being willing to develop in obscurity. It's accepting correction without resentment. Being teachable without needing recognition. Letting growth happen even when no one notices. And then there is the obedience test. Will you keep doing what is right when there is no feedback? When there's no response to confirm that it matters? When silence follows effort? Obedience in these moments feels unrewarded, but it builds alignment. It shapes habits. It forms discipline. It prepares you for responsibility that will later require it without question. These tests don't happen all at once. They overlap, they repeat, and they don't end when you pass them once. Because capacity isn't proven in a moment, it's confirmed over time. This is why you sometimes feel tired without knowing why. Why you feel stretched without seeing progress. Why you feel tested even though nothing dramatic is happening. You're not stuck. You're being measured quietly. Measured for steadiness. Measured for restraint. Measured for reliability. And when the time comes, when visibility finally arrives, what you've practiced in silence will carry you in public. That's what these invisible tests are doing. And whether you realize it or not, you're already taking them. There comes a moment when the noise fades. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just quietly. The signals you were used to stop arriving. No clear answers. No obvious direction. No immediate confirmation that you're doing the right thing. And this is usually where anxiety tries to speak louder than truth. But pause here, because quiet does not mean absence, and stillness does not mean abandonment. Silence is not where God leaves you. It's where He watches how you move without instructions. This is a difficult shift to accept because we are conditioned to associate guidance with sound, with signs, with clarity that comes quickly. But maturity is not formed in constant instruction. It's formed in environments where choice matters. When every step is spelled out, growth is limited. But when direction is withheld, discernment is revealed. Silence creates space. Space for decisions that aren't driven by fear. Space for obedience that isn't dependent on reassurance. Space for characters to act without being prompted. This is why silence often follows consistency. After you've shown you can listen, you're tested to see if you can lead yourself. After you've followed directions, you're observed to see if alignment remains when direction pauses. Not because God is distant, but because trust is being extended. Silence is not a withdrawal of care. It's a change in posture, less instruction, more observations, less correction, more confirmation through action. This is where many people misunderstand what's happening. They assume quiet means something is wrong, that they've missed a step, that approval has been withdrawn. But silence is often the sign that you've been trusted with responsibility. Responsibility to choose wisely, to remain steady, to continue doing what is right without needing reinforcement. It's the environment where motives surface, where discipline proves itself, where maturity either stabilizes or fractures. And notice the tone of this moment. There is no accusation here, no pressure, no threat, just space. Space to see whether what you learned has taken root. Space to see whether obedience was conditional or internal. Space to see whether alignment holds when reassurance is removed. Silence doesn't rush you. It doesn't push. It doesn't intimidate. It waits. And in that waiting, something important happens. You stop moving for approval. You stop reacting to noise. You begin acting from conviction. This is not a test of perfection. It's a test of maturity. Can you remain steady when feedback pauses? Can you keep walking when the path feels quiet? Can you make decisions anchored in truth rather than urgency? Silence is where this is revealed. Not harshly, not suddenly, but clearly. And once you understand that, the quiet stops feeling threatening. It starts feeling purposeful. Because what is being formed here cannot be built in noise. There is a moment in every growth process when guidance steps back. Not because it's no longer available, but because it is no longer meant to lead every move. Instructions are not removed to confuse you. They are removed to see what has taken root. Because maturity is not proven by how well you follow directions. It's proven by how you act when no one is directing you. This is the quiet requirement behind every promotion. Values must become internal. Think about children growing up. At first, everything is explained. What to do, what not to do, why boundaries exist. But over time, the instructions change. Not because the parent stops caring, but because the child is expected to choose well without being told. Freedom increases only when judgment can be trusted. The same principle applies everywhere. In the workplace, supervision fades before authority arrives. A manager doesn't hover over someone they're preparing to trust. They observe. They watch how decisions are made when approval isn't required, how responsibility is handled without reminders, how ethics hold when convenience would be easier. Promotion comes after trust is established, not before. Leadership follows the same pattern. Before someone is given influence, they are observed without a spotlight, not tested on their speech, but on their consistency, not measured by ambition, but by restraint. Leadership isn't about knowing what to do when told. It's about knowing what to do when no one is telling you. This is why instructions are removed before promotion, because authority cannot be managed externally forever. It must be governed internally. Wisdom has to become instinct, not something you reach for when pressure rises, but something that responds automatically. When values are internalized, decisions become steady. When wisdom is embedded, alignment holds without effort. This is what is being tested in this season, not your knowledge, not your skill, but whether truth has moved from your mind into your behavior. And this process is careful. There is no rush here, no push toward failure, just observation. Observation of how you handle freedom, how you carry responsibility, how you choose when no one is correcting you. Because promotion does not come with constant supervision. It comes with trust. And trust is only given when wisdom no longer needs instructions to function. So if it feels like guidance has faded, if the clarity you relied on feels quieter than before, consider this. You may not be being left behind. You may be being trusted. And once you understand that, the absence of instructions no longer feels like loss. It feels like preparation. There is one story that explains this pattern with quiet precision, not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. Joseph. Not the version reduced to triumph, the version before the title, before recognition, before anything made sense. Joseph's promotion did not begin with elevation. It began with delay, long delay, a future spoken over him early, yet nothing around him moved in that direction. Instead, his environment shrank, from family to isolation, from familiarity to foreign ground, from promise to pressure. And this is the part most people skip. Joseph was given responsibility without recognition, in places where no one cared about his calling, in roles that did not match the future he was told about, in environments that did not reward faithfulness. And still, he was expected to manage well, to remain steady, to act wisely, to steward what was placed in his hands, even when it felt unrelated to where he was going. This is the test, not whether the promise was real, but whether capacity could grow in conditions that did not affirm it. Joseph was not promoted out of difficulty. He was developed inside it. Notice the pattern. Every time his environment shifted, responsibility increased. Not status, responsibility. And responsibility came without explanation. No announcement, no timeline, no reassurance that this would lead anywhere. Just expectation. Expectation to manage well, to remain aligned, to act with integrity when no one was watching. And this is where something important happens. God didn't change Joseph's environment first. He changed his capacity. Capacity to lead quietly, capacity to interpret wisely, capacity to govern internally before governing externally. Because authority is not built in comfort. It is built where choices matter and consequences are real. Joseph learned to manage pressure long before he managed people. He learned restraint before influence, clarity before command. And when promotion finally came, it did not overwhelm him because the weight of it was already familiar. This is the difference testing makes. It does not rush you forward, it prepares you underneath. So when the door finally opens, you are not surprised by responsibility. You are ready for it. And that is the part of the story that explains everything. God did not remove Joseph from testing to promote him. He promoted him because the testing worked. And that pattern has not changed. There is a moment during testing that determines everything. Not the pressure itself, not the waiting, but how you respond while nothing is changing. Because the most dangerous part of a test is not the difficulty. It's the quiet decisions you make while enduring it. The first danger is bitterness. It doesn't arrive loudly, it settles in slowly. It begins when effort feels unacknowledged, when fairness feels absent, when patience starts asking questions. Bitterness convinces you that something has been taken from you, that you are owed more than you've received. And once that belief settles in, it changes how you see everything. People become threats. Delays become personal. Faithfulness starts to feel foolish. But bitterness doesn't protect you. It reshapes you. The next danger is comparison. Comparison whispers that timing should be equal, that progress should look similar, that advancement should follow effort in a straight line. You start measuring your journey against someone else's outcome. You forget that preparation is personal, that capacity is not uniform. Comparison doesn't motivate growth, it distracts from it. While you're watching someone else move, you stop tending what is being built in you. Then there is the urge to rush. Rushing God doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like impatience disguised as initiative, forcing doors, making moves early, settling for shortcuts that promise relief. But rushing creates exposure before stability. It trades long-term readiness for short-term movement, and movement without grounding leads to regret. Another danger is quitting quietly, not quitting loudly, not announcing your exit, just pulling back internally, doing the minimum, withholding effort, reducing engagement. You still show up, but you're no longer invested. Quiet quitting feels safe, but it slowly erodes what testing was meant to strengthen. Then there is performing for validation, working harder not because it's right, but because you want to be seen, shaping behavior around approval, letting affirmation replace alignment. Performance may gain attention, but it cannot replace integrity. And integrity is what testing is measuring. None of these responses mean you failed. They mean you're human. But awareness matters, because testing seasons don't just reveal capacity, they refine it. Every response either strengthens what is being built or weakens it. This is why the warning is gentle, but firm. Do not let bitterness rewrite your posture. Do not let comparison steal your focus. Do not rush what needs time. Do not quit internally. Do not perform for approval. The test is not trying to trap you, it's trying to prepare you. And how you respond now will determine how you stand later. Because promotion doesn't only require readiness, it requires resilience. And resilience is formed in moments exactly like this one. There is a way to move through this season without trying to control it. A way to pass the test without turning your life into a performance. Because the goal is not to guess what is being evaluated. The goal is to live steadily while it is happening. The first principle is simple. Do your work as if promotion already came. Not with arrogance, not with entitlement, but with responsibility. Show up with the mindset of someone who can already be trusted. Finish what you start. Handle small assignments with the same care you would give larger ones. Because authority does not arrive and then shape behavior. Behavior reveals whether authority can arrive. Next, guard your reactions more than your actions. Actions are visible. Reactions are formative. Anyone can behave well when things go right. Character shows itself when things stall. Watch how quickly frustration speaks. Notice where resentment tries to grow. Pay attention to how disappointment moves through you. You don't need to suppress emotion. You need to steward it. Because unmanaged reactions quietly undo disciplined actions. Then, stay consistent when nothing rewards you. Consistency is easiest when it produces results. It becomes meaningful when it doesn't. Keep the same standard. Keep the same effort. Keep the same integrity. Not because someone is tracking it, but because you are becoming someone who doesn't need tracking. This is where endurance is built. Another discipline matters more than most people realize. Resist narrating your struggle online. Not everything needs an audience. Not every season needs commentary. Explaining yourself constantly drains focus. Turning hardship into content can distort intention. Silence here is not isolation. It is protection. Some processes lose their strength when exposed too early. Some growth requires privacy. Let the work speak later. And finally, keep your life orderly. Sleep well, eat properly, finish what is in front of you. Stability in ordinary things reinforces stability in unseen ones. This is how people pass tests they didn't know they were taking. Not by striving harder, not by forcing outcomes, but by living aligned when nothing demands it. And when promotion eventually comes, it won't feel sudden. It will feel familiar because you were already living as if it mattered. And that is how readiness quietly becomes reality. There is a moment when something shifts, not around you, but within you. And it's subtle. No announcement, no countdown, no surge of excitement to signal that anything is about to change. In fact, if you're waiting for fireworks, you'll miss it. Because proximity to promotion rarely feels dramatic. It feels quiet, grounded, almost ordinary. One of the first signs is this. Your emotional reactions begin to soften. Things that once unsettled you no longer pull as hard. Delays don't sting the same way. Opinions don't carry the same weight. You still feel, but you're no longer governed by feeling. You pause before responding. You listen more than you react. You don't need to prove what you already know. This isn't numbness, it's regulation. Another sign is increased discernment. You start seeing situations clearly without overthinking them. You recognize patterns faster. You notice motives, both yours and others, with less confusion. Decisions become simpler, even when they're not easy. You know what matters. You know what doesn't. There is less urgency to fix everything, less impulse to explain yourself. Discernment replaces anxiety. Then something else changes. Your need for validation begins to fade. Not because affirmation wouldn't feel good, but because it's no longer necessary. You stop chasing reassurance. You stop measuring yourself by response. You stop adjusting your behavior to be noticed. Approval becomes optional. And this is important because authority cannot rest on applause. It collapses under it. Another sign is clarity without excitement. You understand where you are, you understand what you're doing, and you're no longer impatient about it. There's no rush to announce progress, no urgency to make something happen. You're steady, the calm kind of steady that doesn't need momentum to stay upright. And finally, there is peace instead of pressure. Not the absence of responsibility, not the absence of challenge, but the absence of internal noise. You're not forcing timing. You're not negotiating outcomes. You're not arguing with the process. You're present. Peace doesn't mean nothing is coming. It means you're no longer bracing for it. This is often when people misunderstand what's happening. They assume the quiet means stagnation. They think the calm means settling. But peace is not complacency, it's alignment. And alignment is what makes promotion sustainable. So if you notice these signs, less emotional reaction, clearer judgment, reduced need for validation, clarity without excitement, peace instead of pressure. Don't rush to interpret them, just stay steady. Because what's forming now doesn't need hype to hold weight. And when movement comes, it won't disturb your peace, it will match it. There is a moment when the tension eases, not because circumstances change, but because something inside you settles. And it happens quietly. No announcement. No surge of emotion, no signal that tells you to prepare for a shift. In fact, if you're expecting intensity, you may miss it entirely. Because nearing promotion rarely feels urgent. It feels stable. One of the earliest signs is this. Your emotional reactions lose their sharp edge. Situations that once pulled you into frustration no longer command the same response. Delays don't provoke panic. Opinions don't dictate your mood. You still notice what's happening, but you're no longer dragged by it. You respond with intention instead of impulse. You pause before speaking. You choose when others would react. This isn't indifference, it's control. Another sign begins to surface alongside it. Your discernment deepens. You read situations with less effort. You sense what aligns and what doesn't without needing to analyze every detail. You recognize when to engage and when to step back. You stop mistaking urgency for importance. You stop confusing noise with direction. Your judgment becomes quieter but clearer. Then something else shifts. Your need for validation decreases. You don't stop appreciating encouragement. You simply stop depending on it. You're no longer measuring progress by attention. You're no longer adjusting your pace to be noticed. You're no longer waiting for permission to feel secure. Approval becomes optional, not essential. This matters because authority cannot be sustained by affirmation. It requires inner stability. Another sign is clarity without excitement. You understand what you're doing. You understand why you're doing it. And you don't feel the need to dramatize the process. There's no rush to announce milestones, no pressure to accelerate outcomes, no restlessness to prove momentum. You're clear, and clarity no longer needs adrenaline. And then there is peace, not the absence of responsibility, not the absence of effort, but the absence of pressure. You're not negotiating timing. You're not forcing outcomes. You're not arguing with where you are. You're present, focused, steady. This is often misunderstood. People assume calm means settling. They mistake peace for complacency. They think stillness means stagnation. But peace is not passivity, it's alignment. And alignment is what makes promotion sustainable. So if you notice these signs, less emotional reaction, sharper discernment, reduced need for validation, clarity without excitement, peace instead of pressure. Don't rush to label the moment. Don't demand confirmation, just remain steady. Because what is approaching does not require urgency to arrive. And when movement finally comes, it will not disrupt your peace. It will fit it. If you feel hidden right now, this is for you. If your work is steady but unseen, if your effort feels real but unacknowledged, if it seems like others are moving while you remain where you are. Because hidden does not mean forgotten, and unseen does not mean insignificant. If answers feel delayed, if clarity arrives slower than you hoped, if direction seems quieter than it once was, this is not a sign that you've lost your way. It is a sign that something deeper is being adjusted. And if progress feels invisible, if there are no markers to prove that anything is changing, if growth feels internal rather than external, that does not mean you are behind. It means you are being aligned. Alignment rarely announces itself. It happens quietly beneath the surface, before it becomes visible. Think of alignment like setting a foundation. Nothing rises until it is level. Nothing holds until it is balanced. And leveling takes time. If you are tempted to measure your season by speed, resist that urge. Speed does not equal readiness. Movement does not equal direction. You are not late. You are not missing something others have found. You are not stalled because you failed. You are being positioned. This season is adjusting how you carry responsibility. It is refining how you respond to pressure. It is clarifying what you will tolerate and what you will no longer carry forward. And this kind of work is quiet by design, because if alignment happened publicly, it would be rushed, interrupted, and influenced by opinion. So it happens in private. If you feel stretched without explanation, if expectations seem higher without authority increasing, if you're holding more weight without more visibility, that is alignment happening in real time. You are learning steadiness. You are learning restraint. You are learning clarity without applause. These are not delays, they are adjustments. And adjustments determine how far something can go without breaking. So reframe this moment. Not as waiting, not as being overlooked, not as standing still, but as being brought into position. Because when alignment is complete, movement will not feel forced, it will feel natural. And when progress finally becomes visible, it will not surprise you, it will make sense. Because you were never behind, you were being aligned. There is a moment every life reaches when the noise stops. No warning, no explanation, just the sudden absence of response. You prayed with precision. You acted with integrity. You waited with patience. And still, nothing answered back. This is not the absence of God. This is the moment He steps closer than words can reach. Because silence is never random. It is arranged. When God grows quiet, it is never because He has withdrawn. It is because something irreversible is being decided. In Scripture, silence is never weakness. It is procedure. Before Joseph wore authority, he heard years of unanswered cries. Before Moses stood before Pharaoh, he stood alone in obscurity. Before David sat on the throne, he hid in caves with promises that seemed delayed. The pattern is ancient and precise. God speaks to begin a calling, but He uses silence to prepare a carrier. When instruction has been given, heaven pauses to observe alignment. Silence is how God watches what remains when reassurance is removed. Anyone can obey while being affirmed. Anyone can believe while hearing encouragement. But silence exposes something deeper. It shows whether faith was anchored in God or dependent on his voice. Because the test is never about information, it is about formation. Silence removes emotional support systems, it strips applause, it quiets validation, and what remains reveals readiness. This is why silence often arrives right before movement, because promotion without internal stability creates collapse. God does not elevate based on excitement. He elevates based on structure. Silence checks the foundation. In quiet seasons, reactions become evidence. Bitterness surfaces or trust deepens. Entitlement appears or humility strengthens. Fear expands or discipline matures. Nothing is wasted. Every day without answers trains discernment. Every unanswered prayer builds endurance. Every delay strengthens obedience without reward. Silence is where motives are refined, and this is where many misunderstand the process. They assume silence means denial, but Scripture shows silence often means confirmation is underway. God does not explain during testing because explanation would interfere with transformation. When clarity arrives too early, character stops growing, so God withholds commentary and observes consistency. He watches how you treat people who cannot advance you, how you respond when unseen, how you steward small responsibilities with no recognition. Silence measures loyalty, not loyalty to outcomes, but loyalty to instruction. Because elevation requires trust, and trust must be proven in environments with no reinforcement. This is why Jesus remained quiet before accusation. He had already spoken truth. Now silence allowed the Father's purpose to proceed. Silence does not interrupt destiny, it protects it. In Scripture, silence often precedes authority. When God is silent, heaven is active. Processes are aligning, permissions are shifting, resistance is being restrained. But none of this requires your awareness. It requires your steadiness. Silence demands maturity. It trains you to move without emotional confirmation, to stand without reassurance, to obey without applause. This is where faith becomes internal, not reactive. Because faith that survives silence cannot be shaken by pressure. And then, without announcement, movement comes. Doors open quietly. Favor emerges naturally. Authority is recognized without self-promotion. And people assume it happens suddenly. They did not see the years when silence trained your posture. They did not witness the restraint, the discipline, the private obedience. Silence prepared you for weight. Because elevation adds pressure. Influence increases responsibility. Visibility multiplies scrutiny. And without silence first, collapse follows exposure. God never rushes outcomes. He secures vessels. So if heaven feels quiet now, it is not absence. It is inspection. It is refinement. It is confirmation being finalized. And when the moment arrives, God will not explain the silence. He will reveal why it was necessary. God does not test to fail you. He tests to confirm you. If this brought clarity, stay with the channel. More depth is coming.